The mop made the same sound it always did against the marble floors. Back and forth, back and forth. Rosa had been cleaning the Westbrook Music Academy for almost 4 years now, and she knew every corner of this building better than most of the students who studied here. She worked the night shift, which meant she arrived when most people were leaving. The hallways would still echo with piano notes and violin strings when she pushed her cart through the front entrance. By the time she finished, usually around midnight, the building was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the soft squeak of her shoes. Rosa was 43 years old. She had come to America from the Philippines when she was 28, carrying 2 suitcases and a heart full of hope. Back then, she thought things would be different. She thought the sacrifice would be temporary. 15 years later, she was still mopping floors, but she never complained, not once. She had a small apartment. She could send money home to her mother. She was alive, and she was healthy. Many people had less. What nobody at the academy knew, what Rosa had never told a single person in America, was that she used to play piano. Not just play. She used to be good. Really good. When Rosa was a little girl growing up in a small town outside Manila, her grandmother noticed something. Whenever music played on the radio, Rosa would stop whatever she was doing. Her eyes would close. Her fingers would move in the air, pressing invisible keys. Her grandmother was not a rich woman. She sold vegetables at the local market and lived in a house with a roof that leaked when it rained. But she saved every peso she could for 3 years until she had enough to buy a second-hand keyboard from a shop in the city. The day she brought it home, Rosa cried. She was 7 years old, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. She taught herself to play it first, copying songs from the radio, figuring out melodies by ear. Then a teacher at her school noticed her talent and offered free lessons. By the time Rosa was 10, she was performing at local events. By 12, she had won a national competition for young pianists. People called her a prodigy. Newspapers wrote about her. A music school in Manila offered her a scholarship, and then everything changed. Her father got sick. The medical bills piled up. Her mother took a job overseas as a domestic helper in Saudi Arabia. The scholarship meant nothing when there was no money for food, no money for transportation, no money for the clothes Rosa would need to attend a fancy school in the city. The keyboard was sold to pay for medicine. Rosa never blamed anyone. Life was hard, and people did what they had to do. She finished school, worked different jobs, and eventually got the chance to move to America when a distant relative sponsored her visa. She arrived in Boston with big dreams. Maybe she could study music again. Maybe she could find a way back to the piano. But reality hit fast. She needed to work. She needed to survive. Music lessons cost money. Rent cost money. Everything cost money. Years passed. The dream got quieter and quieter until it was just a whisper in the back of her mind. But it never fully died. Every night at the academy, Rosa would pause outside the recital hall and listen. Sometimes a student would still be practicing, and the music would drift through the heavy wooden doors. She would stand there with her mop, eyes closed, fingers moving slightly at her sides. She still remembered. Her hands still remembered. The students at Westbrook came from wealthy families. Their parents paid $50,000 a year for tuition. They drove expensive cars and wore designer clothes and talked about summer trips to Europe. Most of them barely noticed Rosa. She was just the cleaning lady, part of the background, as invisible as the walls. That was fine with her. She did not need to be seen. But some of the students were not just indifferent. Some of them were cruel in the casual way that people with too much can sometimes be cruel to people with too little. There was a group of seniors who liked to stay late in the common room, talking loudly and leaving messes for Rosa to clean up. Their leader was a young man named Derek, the son of a board member. He had blonde hair that was always perfectly styled and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He was talented. Rosa had heard him play. But there was something cold about him, something that enjoyed making others feel small. One Thursday evening, Rosa was cleaning near the recital hall when she heard the Chopin piece she loved most, Ballade No. 1. She stopped without meaning to, leaning on her mop, letting the music wash over her. She did not notice that Derek and his friends were watching her from down the hallway. "Hey," Derek called out. "You like that?" Rosa straightened up quickly, embarrassed to be caught. "Sorry. I will continue working." "No, no," Derek said, walking toward her with that smile on his face. His friends followed, 4 of them in total, already grinning like they knew a joke she did not. "You really like music, huh? I see you standing there every night." Rosa did not answer. She had learned a long time ago that it was better to stay quiet around people like this. "You know what?" Derek said, snapping his fingers like he had just had a brilliant idea. "We have a piano for you, a special one." His friends laughed. "Come on," he said. "I want to show you something." Rosa should have said no. She should have made an excuse and walked away. But something in her, maybe the part that still remembered being 12 years old and fearless, made her follow. They led her down a hallway she rarely cleaned, past the storage rooms and the maintenance closets, to a door at the very end. Derek opened it with a dramatic flourish. Inside was a piano. But not like the gleaming instruments in the practice rooms. This one was old and broken. It sat in the corner like a forgotten thing, covered in dust and cobwebs. Several keys were missing. Others were cracked and yellow. One leg was propped up with old books because it was shorter than the rest. "It is beautiful, right?" Derek said, and his friends burst out laughing. Rosa stared at the piano. It hurt her to see an instrument treated this way. "Go ahead," Derek said, pulling out his phone. "Play something for us. Give us a concert." The others had their phones out too. They were recording. They wanted to capture her embarrassment, her fumbling attempts on a broken instrument. They wanted something to laugh at later. Rosa knew she should walk away. She knew this was a trap. They wanted to humiliate her. And she was giving them exactly what they wanted by standing here. But then she looked at the piano again. It was broken. It was forgotten. It had been shoved into a dark room where nobody would ever hear it again. She understood exactly how that felt. Slowly, Rosa set down her mop. She walked to the piano and sat on the dusty bench. The wood creaked under her weight. Derek zoomed in with his camera, barely able to contain his excitement. Rosa placed her fingers on the keys. They were cold and rough. Some of them did not even move when she pressed them. She closed her eyes and took a breath. And then she began to play. The first note was wrong. It came out flat and dull because the key was damaged. Derek snorted with laughter behind her, but Rosa did not stop. She adjusted. Her fingers found another path, skipping the broken key, finding the same note an octave higher. It was something she did without thinking, the way a river flows around a rock without slowing down. She pressed another key. This one worked, then another, and then the music began. It did not start loud. It started soft, like a whisper, like a secret being told for the first time in 15 years. Rosa's fingers moved across the keys, and the sound that came out was nothing like what anyone in that room expected. She was playing Liszt. La Campanella. One of the most difficult piano pieces ever written. Professional musicians practiced for years just to attempt it. Some never mastered it at all. Rosa had not touched a piano in 15 years. But her hands remembered. Her heart remembered. Every note was stored somewhere deep inside her, waiting for this moment. The laughter behind her stopped. Derek's smile faded. His phone was still recording, but his hand had gone slack. He was not grinning anymore. He was staring. The music filled the dusty storage room like light flooding through a window. It bounced off the old boxes and forgotten furniture, and made the whole space feel different, almost sacred. The broken piano, the one that had been thrown away and neglected, was singing. Rosa's eyes were closed. She was not in that room anymore. She was somewhere else entirely. She was 7 years old again, sitting in her grandmother's house, with the second-hand keyboard in front of her. She could smell the rice cooking in the kitchen. She could hear the rain on the tin roof. She could feel her grandmother's hand on her shoulder, gentle and proud. She was 12, walking onto the stage at the national competition. Her dress was borrowed. Her shoes were too tight. But when she sat down and played, none of that mattered. The music made her equal to everyone in that room. The music made her more than equal. She was 15, watching her father get sicker. She was 20, saying goodbye to her mother at the airport. She was 28, stepping off the plane in Boston with nothing but hope and 2 suitcases. All of it was in the music. Every struggle, every sacrifice, every dream she had buried, but never forgotten. The piece built and built, the notes cascading like a waterfall, fast and precise. La Campanella was meant to sound like bells ringing, and Rosa made that broken piano ring like a cathedral on a Sunday morning. One of the students, a girl with red hair who had been laughing the loudest, took a step backward. Her hand was over her mouth. Her eyes were wide and wet. Another student, a tall boy who played violin, whispered something under his breath. It sounded like a prayer. Derek had lowered his phone completely. He was not recording anymore. He had forgotten about the video, forgotten about the joke, forgotten about everything except what he was hearing. Because what he was hearing was impossible. This was the cleaning lady. The woman who mopped floors and emptied trash cans. The woman he had never looked at twice, never thought about, never considered as anything more than part of the building's background. And she was playing better than anyone he had ever heard. The music reached its climax. Rosa's fingers flew across the keys so fast they were almost a blur. She hit note after note with perfect accuracy, adjusting for the broken keys without missing a beat, making the impossible look effortless. And then, slowly, the piece began to wind down. The notes grew softer, gentler, like a storm passing, leaving calm in its wake. Rosa played the final note and let it hang in the air. Then there was silence. Complete, absolute silence. Rosa opened her eyes. For a moment, she had forgotten where she was. The music had taken her so far away that coming back felt like waking from a dream. She looked down at her hands. They were trembling. Not from nerves, but from something deeper. From emotion she had kept locked away for so long that releasing it felt almost painful. She turned around on the bench. The students were frozen. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They just stared at her like they were seeing her for the first time. Because they were. Derek's face had changed completely. The arrogance was gone. The cruelty was gone. What was left was something Rosa had never expected to see from him. Shame. He looked down at his phone, at the video he had started recording to mock her, and something shifted in his expression. He looked sick. The girl with red hair was crying now. She did not wipe the tears away. She just let them fall. "How?" one of the boys started to say, but he could not finish the sentence. Rosa stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak. She steadied herself against the piano, this broken instrument that everyone had given up on, and took a breath. "I used to play," she said quietly. "A long time ago." Nobody responded. What could they say? Rosa picked up her mop. She looked at the group of students one more time. These young people who had everything she never had. And she felt no anger toward them. She only felt tired and strangely empty, like something had been drained out of her. She walked past them and out of the storage room. Behind her, she heard someone whisper, "What just happened?" She did not stay to hear the answer. Rosa finished her shift that night like she always did. She cleaned the bathrooms. She vacuumed the carpets. She emptied the trash cans in the practice rooms. She moved through the building like a ghost, doing her job, invisible again, but something had changed. She could feel it in her chest, a loosening of something that had been tight for 15 years. She had played. After all this time, she had played, and it had felt like coming home. When she finally clocked out and walked to her car in the empty parking lot, she sat behind the wheel for a long time without starting the engine. She looked at her hands in the dim light. These hands had worked so hard. They had scrubbed toilets and washed dishes and carried heavy loads. They were rough and calloused, nothing like the soft hands of the students at Westbrook. But tonight, these same hands had made music, beautiful music. Music that had made people cry. Rosa allowed herself to smile. It was a small smile. private, and secret. But it was real. She did not know that Derek's video was still on his phone. She did not know that he would show it to his roommate that night. And his roommate would show it to someone else. And that person would post it online. She did not know that by morning, the video would have been seen by 10,000 people. By the next afternoon, it would be 500,000. By the end of the week, it would be everywhere. She did not know that her life was about to change completely. All she knew, sitting in her car in that dark parking lot, was that for 8 minutes and 37 seconds, she had been herself again. The real Rosa. The one she thought she had lost forever. She started the car and drove home. The next morning, her phone began to ring. And it did not stop. Rosa woke up to 17 missed calls. She stared at her phone, confused. Nobody ever called her. Her mother back in the Philippines preferred to text because calls were expensive. Her co-workers at the academy never contacted her outside of work. She had a few friends, but they were busy people with their own lives. 17 missed calls made no sense. Then she saw the text messages. Dozens of them. From numbers she did not recognize. One message said, "Is this the woman from the piano video?" Another said, "Please call me back. I am a reporter from Channel 7 News." Another said, "I watched your video and cried for an hour. You are incredible." Rosa's heart started beating faster. She opened the internet on her phone and searched for "cleaning lady piano video." The results made her dizzy. The video was everywhere. It had been shared on social media thousands of times. News websites had picked it up. Someone had written an article titled, "Cleaning Lady Stuns Students with Hidden Piano Talent." Another headline said, "You will not believe what this janitor can do." Rosa watched the video for the first time. It was strange seeing herself from the outside. There she was, sitting at that broken piano in her cleaning uniform. Her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face tired from a long shift, and then she started playing. Even watching it now, knowing it was herself, Rosa felt something stir in her chest. The music was beautiful. She had not imagined it. She had not exaggerated the memory. It was real. The comments under the video went on forever. "I am literally crying right now. Who is this woman? She plays better than my professor. This is what happens when you judge people by their job instead of their soul. She needs to be on a stage, not cleaning floors." Rosa put her phone down. Her hands were shaking. She did not know what to feel. Part of her was embarrassed. She had never wanted attention. She had spent 15 years being invisible, and she had grown comfortable with that invisibility. Now suddenly the whole world was looking at her. But another part of her, a part she had tried to silence for so long, felt something else entirely. Hope. She called in sick to work that day. She could not face going back to the academy. Not yet. Not until she understood what was happening. But the academy came to her. That afternoon, there was a knock on her apartment door. Rosa opened it to find a woman she recognized but had never spoken to directly. It was Dr. Helen Reyes, the director of the Westbrook Music Academy. Dr. Reyes was a small woman in her 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind thin glasses. She was known for being strict but fair. Students respected her. Staff admired her. She had run the academy for over 20 years. Rosa had seen her many times in the hallways, always walking with purpose, always surrounded by important people. They had never exchanged more than a polite nod. Now, Dr. Reyes was standing at her door. "May I come in?" the director asked. Rosa was so shocked she could barely speak. She stepped aside and let her in. Her apartment was small and modest. A single bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a living room with a second-hand couch and a television that was 10 years old. Rosa felt suddenly ashamed of how little she had, but Dr. Reyes did not seem to notice or care. She sat down on the couch like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I watched the video," she said. "About 50 times, actually." Rosa did not know what to say. "Why did you never tell anyone?" Dr. Reyes asked. Her voice was gentle, not accusing. She genuinely wanted to understand. Rosa sat down across from her. She folded her hands in her lap and took a moment to find the right words. "What was there to tell?" she finally said. "I am a cleaner," That is my job. Nobody asks the cleaning lady about her dreams. Dr. Reyes was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I grew up poor too, she said. My parents were immigrants from Mexico. My father worked in a factory. My mother cleaned houses. Just like you clean our academy. Rosa looked up, surprised. I know what it is like. Dr. Reyes continued. To be looked through instead of looked at. To be treated like you do not matter. Because of the work you do. I know that feeling very well. She leaned forward slightly. But I also know something else. I know that talent like yours does not come along very often. I have been in music education for 40 years. I have heard thousands of students play. And I am telling you, Rosa, what you did on that broken piano was extraordinary. Rosa felt tears building behind her eyes. She blinked them back. It was a long time ago, she said. I am 43 years old. My chance is gone. Says who? The question hung in the air. Dr. Reyes reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. She placed it on the coffee table between them. This is a full scholarship application, she said. Tuition, books, everything covered. I want you to study at Westbrook. I want you to finish what you started 30 years ago. Rosa stared at the folder like it might bite her. I cannot, she whispered. I have to work. I have bills. I send money to my mother. I cannot just stop everything and become a student. We will figure it out, Doctor, Reyes said. We can adjust your work schedule. We can find you additional financial support. There are ways, Rosa. There are always ways when something matters enough. Rosa shook her head. This was too much. It was too fast. Yesterday she was invisible. Today the director of one of the best music academies in the country was sitting in her living room offering her a scholarship. It felt like a dream. And Rosa had learned a long time ago not to trust dreams. Why? She asked. Why would you do this for me? Dr. Reyes smiled. It was a sad smile, full of understanding. Because I remember being you, she said. 40 years ago, someone gave me a chance when nobody else would. A teacher who saw something in me that I could not see in myself. She changed my life. She made everything possible. She gestured toward the folder. Now it is my turn to do the same. Rosa looked at the scholarship application. She thought about her grandmother, who had saved for 3 years to buy her that first keyboard. She thought about all the nights she had stood outside the recital hall, listening to music she wished she could make. She thought about her hands, rough from years of work but still capable of creating beauty. She thought about Derek and his friends, who had tried to humiliate her but had accidentally set her free instead. What if I fail? Rosa asked quietly. What if I am not good enough anymore? Dr. Reyes stood up. She walked over to Rosa and did something unexpected. She took Rosa's hands in her own. You played Liszt on a broken piano after 15 years without practice, she said. You did not fail then. You will not fail now. She squeezed Rosa's hands gently and let go. Think about it, she said. Take a few days. But do not take too long. Opportunities like this do not wait forever. She walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back one more time. The world knows who you are now, Rosa. The only question is what you are going to do about it. Then she was gone. Rosa sat alone in her small apartment, the scholarship folder on the table in front of her. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She picked up the folder and opened it. For the first time in 15 years, she let herself imagine a different future. Rosa said yes. It took her 3 days to decide. 3 days of staring at that folder, of reading the comments under her video, of lying awake at night asking herself if she was brave enough to try again. In the end, it was a memory that made her decide. She remembered her grandmother's face the day she brought home that keyboard. The pride in her eyes. The way she had whispered, "This is just the beginning for you." Rosa had let her grandmother down by giving up. She would not let her down again. When she called Dr. Reyes to accept the scholarship, the director sounded genuinely happy. You made the right choice, she said. I will announce it at the faculty meeting tomorrow. Rosa thought that would be the hard part. She was wrong. The announcement spread through the academy like fire. By lunchtime the next day, everyone knew. The cleaning lady was going to be a student. The woman who mopped their floors was going to sit in their classrooms. Some people were supportive. A group of younger students approached Rosa in the hallway and told her they thought she was amazing. One girl, a first-year violin student, said the video had inspired her to practice harder. "If you can play like that after 15 years, she said, then I have no excuse." A few teachers went out of their way to welcome her. The head of the piano department, an older man with white hair and a gentle manner, shook her hand and said he was looking forward to working with her. But not everyone felt that way. Rosa started noticing the whispers. Students would go quiet when she walked by, then start talking again as soon as she passed. She caught fragments of conversations she was not meant to hear. "She does not belong here. It is just a publicity stunt. One viral video and suddenly she thinks she is a musician." The worst came from Derek's circle. Derek himself had been strangely quiet since the night in the storage room. Rosa had not seen him once, but his friends made their feelings clear. One afternoon, Rosa found a note taped to her locker. It said, "Stick to mopping floors." Another day, someone left a broken piano key on her seat in the classroom. When she picked it up, she heard laughter from the back of the room. She did not react. She kept her head down and focused on her studies. But each small cruelty wore her down a little more. Then came the board meeting. Rosa did not know about it at first. She only learned what happened because she overheard two administrators talking in the hallway. Derek's father was a man named Richard, one of the wealthiest donors to the academy. He had given millions of dollars over the years. His name was on a building. His opinion carried weight, and he did not want Rosa there. "She is a cleaner," he had apparently said at the meeting. "This is a serious institution, not a charity. What message does it send when we give scholarships to the janitorial staff?" He had demanded that the board revoke Rosa's scholarship. He had threatened to withdraw his funding if they did not. Dr. Reyes had fought back. She had argued that talent should not be limited by economic background. She had shown the board Rosa's competition records from the Philippines, proving that her skill was real and documented. In the end, the board voted to keep Rosa's scholarship. But it was close. Too close. Rosa found out about all of this from a sympathetic secretary who thought she deserved to know. "They almost took it away from you," the woman said quietly. "Dr. Reyes saved you. But there are still people who want you gone." That night, Rosa could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. The whispers, the notes, the broken piano key, the board meeting, where powerful men in suits had debated whether she deserved a chance. Maybe they were right. Maybe she did not belong. She was 43 years old. She had not studied music formally in over 2 decades. The other students had been training their whole lives. They had private tutors and expensive instruments, and parents who supported their dreams. What did she have? Rough hands and a viral video. The next evening, Rosa went back to the storage room. She did not know why. Something pulled her there. The broken piano was still sitting in the corner. Nobody had moved it. Nobody had fixed it. It was still forgotten, still covered in dust. Rosa sat down on the cracked bench. She did not play. She just sat there in the darkness, her hands resting on the damaged keys. This was where it had all started. This sad, neglected instrument that nobody wanted. Just like her, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw Dr. Reyes standing in the doorway. "I thought I might find you here," the director said. Rosa did not have the energy to pretend. "Maybe this was a mistake," she said. "Maybe I should just go back to cleaning." It was simpler. Dr. Reyes walked into the room and sat down on an old crate across from the piano. "Simpler, yes," she said. "But is that what you want? A simple life where you never find out what you could have been?" Rosa did not answer. "I know what they are saying about you," Dr. Reyes continued. "I know about the notes and the whispers and the board meeting. I know it has been hard." She leaned forward. "But I also know something else. In 2 weeks, we are holding our annual showcase. The biggest event of the year. Every important person in classical music will be there. Scouts from conservatories, executives from record labels, critics from major publications. Rosa looked up. "I want you to perform," Dr. Reyes said. Rosa almost laughed. "Perform? In front of all those people? After 2 weeks of classes?" "Not because of 2 weeks of classes," Dr. Reyes said. "Because of 43 years of life. Because of everything you have been through and everything you have survived. Because that is what makes your music different. That is what makes it real." She stood up and walked over to the piano. She ran her finger along the dusty surface. "The students who mock you, they play perfectly. Their technique is flawless. But most of them have never suffered. They have never lost anything. Their music is beautiful, but it is empty." She looked at Rosa. "Your music has soul. I heard it in that video. Everyone who watched heard it. That is something that cannot be taught. That is something rare." Rosa felt tears building in her eyes. She was so tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of proving herself. Tired of being looked down on. "What if I am not ready?" she whispered. Dr. Reyes smiled gently. "You have been ready your whole life," she said. "You just needed someone to give you a stage." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to Rosa. It was a program for the showcase. At the bottom of the list, in small letters, was a name that had just been added. Rosa Santos. 2 weeks, Dr. Reyes said. "Show them who you are. Show them what they almost threw away." She turned and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she looked back one more time. "And Rosa, pick a piece that means something to you. Not something to impress them. Something true." Then she was gone. Rosa sat alone in the storage room, holding the program in her hands. She looked at her name at the bottom of the list. The last performer of the night. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about all the years of silence. She thought about every person who had ever looked through her like she was not there. 2 weeks. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and walked out of the storage room. She had work to do. The night of the showcase arrived faster than Rosa expected. 2 weeks had felt like 2 days. She had practiced every moment she could find. Early mornings before her shift. Late nights after everyone else had gone home. She barely slept. She barely ate. Every spare minute was spent at the piano. She had chosen her piece carefully. Chopin's Ballade, No. 1. The same piece she used to hear drifting through the recital hall doors while she mopped the floors outside. The piece that had made her stop and close her eyes and remember who she used to be. It was not the most technically difficult piece she could play. But Dr. Reyes had told her to pick something true, and this piece was the truest thing she knew. Now she stood backstage, wearing a simple black dress she had bought, with money she could not really afford to spend. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Through a gap in the curtain, she could see the audience. 300 people filled the grand recital hall. Men in expensive suits. Women in elegant dresses. Critics with notebooks. Scouts with sharp eyes. The most important people in classical music, all gathered in one room. And somewhere out there, sitting in the back, was Derek's father. The man who had tried to have her thrown out. The man who thought she did not belong. Rosa took a deep breath. She tried to steady herself. One by one, the other students performed. They were good. Really good. A young woman played Rachmaninoff with flawless precision. A teenage boy performed a Mozart concerto that earned enthusiastic applause. Each performer walked onto that stage with confidence, with years of training, with the certainty that they belonged there. Then, it was Derek's turn. Rosa watched from the wings as he walked to the piano. He was wearing a perfectly tailored suit. His hair was perfectly styled. Everything about him looked polished and professional. He sat down and began to play. It was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, one of the most challenging pieces in the repertoire. Derek played it beautifully. His technique was impeccable. Every note was precise, every phrase perfectly shaped. The audience applauded warmly when he finished. His father stood up in the back row, clapping harder than anyone else. Derek took his bow and walked off stage. As he passed Rosa in the wings, he paused. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Rosa expected him to say something cruel, some final attempt to shake her confidence before she went on. But he did not. He just nodded once, very slightly, and kept walking. Rosa did not know what to make of it. She did not have time to think about it, because now it was her turn. Dr. Reyes appeared beside her. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Rosa shook her head. "No," Dr. Reyes smiled. "Good. That means you care." She squeezed Rosa's hand once, then stepped back. Rosa walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. She could not see individual faces in the audience, just a sea of shadows beyond the glare. The grand piano sat in the center of the stage, gleaming under the spotlights. It was the most beautiful instrument she had ever seen. She was aware of the whispers. She knew what people were thinking. That is the cleaning lady. The viral video woman. What is she doing here? Rosa sat down on the bench. The leather was cool against her legs. She placed her hands on the keys. For one terrible moment, her mind went blank. She could not remember the first note. She could not remember anything. 15 years of silence pressed down on her, and she thought she might collapse under the weight of it. Then she closed her eyes, and she saw her grandmother, not as she was at the end, old and frail and tired, but as she was on that day 36 years ago, walking through the door with a second-hand keyboard in her arms. Her face was glowing with pride. Her eyes were full of love. "This is just the beginning for you," she had said. Rosa opened her eyes. She took a breath, and she began to play. The first notes of the Chopin ballade floated into the air, soft and searching. The piece began gently, like a question being asked, like a story waiting to be told. Rosa let the music carry her. She was not thinking about technique. She was not thinking about the audience, or the critics, or the scouts. She was not thinking about Derek's father, or the board meeting, or the cruel notes left on her locker. She was just playing. The music built slowly, layer upon layer, emotion upon emotion. It spoke of loss and longing. It spoke of dreams buried and hopes deferred. It spoke of 15 years of silence, of hands that worked instead of played, of a talent hidden away like a secret shame. And then, as the piece reached its heart, the music transformed. It became something fierce and beautiful, something unbreakable. This was the part where Chopin had poured all his passion, all his defiance, all his refusal to be defeated. And Rosa played it like she was telling her own story, because she was. The notes cascaded from the piano like a waterfall, like a storm, like a prayer finally answered. Rosa's fingers flew across the keys with a power she did not know she still had. Every year of struggle, every moment of doubt, every time someone had looked through her like she was invisible, all of it poured out through her hands and into the music. The audience was completely still. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. And then, slowly, the piece began to wind down. The defiance softened into acceptance. The final passages were tender and quiet, like a lullaby, like a goodbye, like a promise. Rosa played the last note and let it hang in the air until it faded into silence. She sat there for a moment, her hands still on the keys, her eyes still closed. She did not want to open them. She did not want to leave this moment. Then she heard it. A single person clapping, then another, and another. She opened her eyes and looked out at the audience. They were standing. All of them. 300 people on their feet, applauding with an intensity she had never experienced before. Some of them were crying. She could see the tears glistening on their faces even through the bright lights. Others were shaking their heads in disbelief, like they could not process what they had just witnessed. The applause went on and on. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It showed no sign of stopping. Rosa stood up from the bench. Her legs were trembling. She bowed, and the applause grew even louder. Through the lights, she caught a glimpse of Dr. Reyes standing at the side of the stage. The director was crying openly, not even trying to hide it. And in the back of the hall, she saw something she did not expect. Derek's father was standing with everyone else. He was not clapping as enthusiastically as the others. His face was complicated, a mix of emotions she could not read from this distance. But he was standing, and he was not leaving. After the show, Rosa was surrounded by people. Scouts handed her business cards. A representative from a famous conservatory asked if she had considered continuing her education. A music critic told her it was the most moving performance he had heard in 20 years. But the moment Rosa would remember most came later, when the crowd had thinned and the hall was almost empty. Derek approached her. He was alone. His father was nowhere in sight. He stood in front of her for a long moment, like he was searching for the right words. "I am sorry," he finally said. "For that night. For the video. For everything." Rosa looked at him. She could see that he meant it. Whatever had happened in the past 2 weeks, whatever he had seen or realized, something in him had changed. "Thank you," she said simply. He nodded and walked away. Rosa stood alone on the empty stage. The grand piano was silent now, but she could still feel the music humming in her bones. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about the long road that had brought her here. She thought about all the years she had spent believing her dream was dead. It was not dead. It had just been waiting. She smiled, picked up her bag, and walked out into the night. Her life was just beginning.